But I felt like nutrition and lifestyle was completely undervalued.
But there's a really interesting connection between the gut and the brain, and also diet and the brain.
Dr. Hazel Wallace, registered nutritionist, best-selling author, and the founder of Food Medic.
And ultimately, the reason that people will lose weight in the end is because of that calorie restriction. But no one will admit that. It's just like, it is just the basic science around it. And I think not negating that some of those diets may have other benefits, but when it comes to weight loss, it's like as if it's this like magical thing that happens because you've reduced carbohydrates. And I think that's fascinating. But I think a lot of the messaging out there is too complex, and we need to.
Hello guys, thank you for your patience. Very lucky to have Dr. Hazel Wallace with us this evening, otherwise known as the Food Medic. And we've done a lot of these talks, and we've covered lots of different industries, but to really get into nutrition and wellness, this is something we've been really excited about. So I guess I'll start by saying hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Dr. Hazel Wallace. I'm a medical doctor, nutritionist, personal trainer, and author and founder of the Food Medic platform. And my main aim with the platform is it's basically an educational platform bridging the gap between mainstream medicine and the latest thoughts and developments in lifestyle and nutrition, and bringing it together in a more of a holistic approach.
Awesome. Great. And I'd love to kind of hear about your journey from early days. We always go right to the beginning. So when did you start, sparking the interest in nutrition and wellness and wanting to be a doctor? Has that always been a lifelong, dream of yours?
It's quite a long story, so I'll try to give you the kind of the top line short version of the story. So basically when I was 14 years of age, my father passed away to a stroke. It was very sudden. It happened while we were having dinner. And that experience shaped the rest of my life. And it was like in that whole kind of week of trauma that I decided that I wanted to go into medicine. And I had never considered it before then. And on that journey, I guess I was interested in nutrition and lifestyle and how that shapes health and disease. And obviously stroke and other forms of cardiovascular health are largely related to how we live our life. So the food that we eat, the stress that we're under, how much activity we do. And so I went into medicine as a student very naively, thinking that I was going to change the world, having this insight and this approach. And while we talked about it very briefly in lectures, we were mostly paying lip service to how important these factors were. And so I learned a lot about drugs and surgery, and I qualified and I went to work in the NHS, and I did really love that. And I still find that's my bread and butter when it comes to medicine. But I felt like nutrition and lifestyle was completely undervalued. And so I retrained as a nutritionist about 4 years ago. I went back and did my master's, and then we were thrust into the COVID pandemic. So I went back to work as a COVID doctor for a little bit, and in the last 12 months, I've just left the NHS to fully go full time with the Food Medic, and I've just released my third book. So that's, even when we look at the research in physical activity or in nutrition, like if we use weight loss, for example, the different type of dietary trends that come and go in that space will tend to be low in one nutrient or restricting food at certain times of the day. But they'll have different names, whether it's like keto, paleo, fasting, different fasting methods. And ultimately, the reason that people will lose weight in the end is because of that calorie restriction. But no one will admit that. It's just like, it is just the basic science around it. And I think not negating that some of those diets may have other benefits, but when it comes to weight loss, it's like as if it's this like magical thing that happens because you've reduced carbohydrates.
Yeah, rocket science. Amazing. And I think that's the danger of social media as well, isn't it? It's if it's bad info, if it's wrong info, you'll still be seeing. And you're coming from a qualified place, so I can imagine that's quite frustrating.
Yeah, it can be. I think maybe because I've been doing this for a while that I try not to get frustrated by it as much as possible, and hope that because if we have like such a powerful message that will kind of overcome a lot of that nonsense. But in my DMs, it's just a lot of people sending me these videos that they've seen. They're like, Hazel, is this true? can you comment on this? So yeah, I spend a lot of my time just watching other people's videos. No, it's not true. You don't have to worry about this. Or yes, there's some merit this actually.
Yeah.
Which is why we have the website and we try to like really unpack a lot of it. We will take a TikTok trend and write a full research-based article on whether it's true or false.
Amazing.
And I think that's why I still think there's like a lot of value in there in longer forms of content as well, like podcasts and blogs and things like that.
Yeah. So moving on to your website. So how did that come around? So how did you have this idea of the followers essentially subscribing to you? Was that a gradual kind of development, or was that you knew exactly that's what you wanted to do? You wanted these people to kind of sign up to hear what you had to say? Tell me a bit about the website.
So the website grew shortly after Instagram 10 years ago, and it's been the same ever since. And it wasn't up until maybe 12 months ago that I completely revamped it, and we decided that it was going to turn into a members platform. And that was a very tricky thing for me to navigate, because I've had people who've read the website for years and never paid anything. So to ask for a small fee was really tricky, but I have a growing team of experts, not just me. I recognize that I'm only one health professional. So now I have like a GP, another dietitian, a physiotherapist, a strength coach, all within the team. And they are able to offer their contributions. They write every week. We've got recipe developers. And in order to fund that and ensure that we keep growing, I wasn't able to just kind of keep funding it myself. And so that was the reason why we made the switch, to make it bigger and better, to reach more people. And we started including like video productions of webinars as well. So it wasn't just short Instagram posts or recipes, but like immersive 2 hours for health professionals and non-health professionals. So it was a real step up in what I was doing, and it's going really well.
Right. Awesome. And so with that being a membership, is that similar to a digital membership? So obviously there's, debunking the fads and things like that. But is it it'll be advice? Can members communicate on the website? Or what's on there?
At the moment, I wrote outlines this disparity in research and healthcare, but takes it a step further, and it's a practical guide, and it's broken into nutrition, movement, sleep, and mood, and how this is different for a female and a female body. And I've had a really incredible response off the back of that. It was an instant #1 bestseller. And now my work's largely focused on female health, which is really, it feels very intuitive to me. It feels really exciting. And the food medic and nutrition is still, 80% of what I do. But this component, just working with women, I feel is a very important piece of work because it's been overlooked for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Plans for a fourth book?
I said that I'll talk about it in August, but I'm sure there will be one.
Yeah. And do you think you think it's sticking with the female factor?
Yeah.
Is that you dedicated to that now? Is it just female only?
I think for the moment it's an area that I really want to explore, and I would love to do my own one-to-one offering, working with women in that space who are struggling with, going through the menopause and want nutrition and lifestyle support around that, or across the menstrual cycle, postpartum, working with women going through those major hormonal milestones, because it's so understudied and underlooked, and there's not many experts in that space who can provide that support. So I will continue both pillars and arms of the work that I do. But what the next 5 years look like, I'm not entirely sure yet.
Keeping us on our toes. It's good. I'd like to kind of open it more on a general scale. So what are the misconceptions of nutrition and wellness? Is there anything that you'd like to kind of correct for us right now?
I think what we covered already, in that like there is this big secret or this magic pill or something that we haven't uncovered yet. And while the field of research in nutrition in particular is growing very quickly and is actually quite new, and we are learning a lot more. Like, for example, gut health and the microbiome is a huge area of research. And that's probably one thing which sometimes can seem a bit faddy or a trend, but I actually think is really interesting, and there's a lot of merit to it. And we know that the gut is linked to a lot more health systems in our body. And I think that's fascinating. But I think a lot of the messaging out there is too complex, and we need to almost bring things back to basics. And oftentimes the most impactful things you can do or seem so simple and so obvious, like eating more vegetables, eating more fiber, a more plant-focused diet, cutting down on alcohol, cutting down on salt. Those really basic things. And yes, there may be for some people merit in like that extra 1%, and it could be adding supplements on top of that, or it could be about meal timing. But those are the things that you want to worry about once you've nailed those basics first, and that's nutrition, movement, sleep, and managing your stress.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the most important thing is just being able to make it clear for people. And that's obviously why people follow you and why they're interested in you, because you're actually able to describe it in a way that's clear. It's not off-putting. It's, people are attracted to the idea of easy nutrition, right? I mean, people don't want to work to be healthy, but, you make it seem easy. Would you say that's right?
Well, I hope so. I try to lower the barrier to entry when it comes to these things, because I know it can feel overwhelming. I wasn't always, able to cook or interested in health. And I think when you show people how possible it is for everyone to do this, then it just makes it feel like a lot more integrative. And I think people are more likely to then take that first step. And it's just about taking a small step. It's not about, thinking about the next 10 steps.
Absolutely.
With anything, really.
Yeah. Achievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to kind of open it up to community as a whole. Obviously, One Club, we are focused on community, about bringing people together from many different industries and backgrounds. How important is community in your work life and, just your general life?
Incredibly important. I think the Food Medic platform and the work that I do wouldn't exist if I didn't have the community, largely on social media. I think there's a lot to say about social media, and there's pros and cons to it, but it's been hugely beneficial. And while most of those 500,000 people are strangers, there's a lot of people who've been there from the beginning and hugely support me. And every book that I buy, or every course that I launch, or every podcast that comes out, and they will be there and they'll be front row of every talk. And they, even when you're having terrible times, they'll be there to support you. So in a weird way, it is a really nice feedback loop to what you're doing, because you know that your message is being heard. I think on a personal level, like building community within the space that I'm in, because I think in medicine, especially at the NHS, I didn't always feel like I fit in that space. And so building my own community in London with other doctors who are slightly more alternative, or other health professionals who are trying to build something bigger than themselves, has been really important. And I think, I'm not a businesswoman, but I've had to learn as I go along, and having people to learn from, be that in members clubs or through social media or through connections, has been hugely important.
Absolutely. And I think it's important not to feel alone in the process as well. I think it can be quite a lonely journey in anything that you do, but to have peers and to have the support, I think is just obviously so important.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for anyone that's looking to maybe get into the world of nutrition and wellness? What would be your advice to them?
I would say that don't do it as an easy option, because I think when it comes to nutrition, a lot of people think that they're experts because we all eat food. And it seems very simple, but it's actually a very complex science.
Yeah.
And as someone who's, when I did my medical degree, before I did the nutrition degree, I also thought it was quite simple. And then I realized it's completely different, and there's a lot more pieces to the puzzle. So I would say that, and if you are going to go into it, ensure you get the right qualifications, or if you don't want to do that and that's not your area of work, partner with people who do have those qualifications. Because I think more and more what I see in my community and audience is that people are calling for that more. They want to know that they're getting the advice from people who are legitimate, because there have been some insane horror stories within the wellness industry of people claiming to be experts in a space that they're not. So that would be it. But it's also, one of the most rapidly growing industries. And if you can get in there and you're passionate about it and you have something that's unique, then it can be an incredible opportunity and life career.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying this show, then chances are you'll like my podcast too. It's called Strategy and Tragedy, and as the name suggests, is all about sharing both the highs and lows of business, because entrepreneurship, even for the most level-headed among us, is a roller coaster. Focused on sharing both interesting stories and important lessons learned by other entrepreneurs. Guests include the likes of Nick Telson-Sillett, the co-founder of Design My Night, which he sold for $30 million. Charlotte Morley of The Little Loop, who made history on BBC's Dragon's Den. Hainan Zhang of Y Hungry, a Y Combinator startup. Tom Adeula, the exited founder of MeTail. Nina Mohanty of Blue Money, and so many more inspirational leaders. Tune in now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon Music, or YouTube.
I'd like to open it up to questions. So if anybody has a question for Dr. Hazel, fire away. Yes.
So, firstly, thank you for taking the time out to be with us. Congratulations on all your success and the positivity you're putting out into the world. And in the same breath, I'm sorry that it stemmed from a negative experience from you and your family. The question I have is, as the world is shifting into this new place of AI, have you thought about how this will interfere, disrupt, or benefit you and your team going forward?
That's a really good question, and something that I am considering more and more because I feel like it's rapidly changing. I'm hoping that it will make things easier and that we will be able to reach more people faster. The thing that I mentioned earlier about the creativity aspect, I personally love that, and I wonder whether that will be taken away because more and more people will be able to replicate things that we do and put a lot of time and effort into without the substance and that like really thoughtful creative process. So I'm slightly reluctant as well. And I think it's something I need to learn more about before like completely deciding to integrate it into our brand and business.
I guess is it lacking the personal touch? You know,
that's the thing. And the thing is, I'm seeing people and businesses use it to like, you know, their advantage, and it seems super interesting. But I also feel like having a personal brand that's built off connection, I don't know if you can replace that with a robot.
Yeah.
We'll see. To be continued.
Scary. Anyone else? Yes.
More an observation, I suppose. I kept fit throughout my life, going on in years, so got a bit bored around it, built a personal trainer who's also a nutritionist, and started working with him only 3 months ago, and it's been transformational. The one thing that he said to me that, for me, unlocked it, is he said, we're 300,000 edible plants on planet. And as soon as he said that, I got it. And I went pescatarian 4 years ago, so it wasn't like a massive shift. But I just wanted to share. No, we're all different. Everybody's switched from get turned on by different things. Because for me, that opened up. And I started cooking. I haven't cooked for decades. So I suppose it's not a question. It's not station, and completely support what you're doing is. I can't understand why people wouldn't do it.
Thank you.
It really is that transformation.
That's so good to hear that you've had that experience and already feeling those benefits. But that's so true he sounds like an incredible PT and nutritionist to be sharing that insight, because it is true that there's 300,000 plus edible plants on the planet, but we as humans consume 7 of those as 75% of our diet. And that's like hugely to the detriment of our health, because we know now that the more diverse our diet, the more diverse our gut microbiome and our health is as a whole. So that's one thing that I think we need to really keep pushing forward, is that like maybe not plant-based wholly diet, but plant-focused diet, plant-forward diet maybe.
Becomes the primary.
That's the thing. And yeah, like you said, once you start really committing to it, you feel the benefits. Yeah. Amazing.
Yes. Female plans for you.
It's not my area of expertise. Personally, I'm interested in how that will be integrated into medicine. And I've read a lot about it in terms of just kind of my own learning and watching documentaries in that space. I think there's a lot to be tapped into there. Obviously, it's very tricky in terms of like navigating it from a legal perspective and ensuring that it's done in the right way. But speaking to like a lot of my friends who are qualified doctors in psychotherapy, they're super interested in this. I think, there's a lot more clinical trials ongoing, even within the UK, using it to like tap into PTSD and trauma and how it can help there. And from speaking about cannabis separately, that's been something that's been trying to push through the NHS quite a lot in recent years, and it's been roadblocked. It can be used by specialist doctors in certain circumstances, for example, in oncology and chronic pain. But there's a lot of conditions where it has been shown to be effective and it's not yet been licensed for use. So I think there's definitely I think we could use it more therapeutically. So we'll see. Hopefully they reduce kind of the restrictions around it to help more people.
And the CBD around that and fitness, I know that's a big thing. So what's your opinion on that?
CBD's interesting. Obviously, you remove the component that gets you high, so you're just looking at that particular cannabidiol component. It seems to be effective for things like anxiety. There's some good research around that, but there's really no good research around sleep and performance.
Right.
And that seems to be where the wellness industry are really pushing for it. And anecdotally, a lot of people do find benefits. And I also currently use a supplement that has it, but it also has 4 other components in it, including melatonin. So it's likely that there's something else in there that's making me sleep so well. And I think that's the thing. And I know that's the thing. When it comes to supplements, it will often be multiple things within one capsule, and it's hard to really find out what's the reason why it's adding so much benefit. And I think if it's not causing you harm and it's got a low risk profile, then I'm absolutely fine with people dabbling in those things. There is quite a few side effects with CBD oil, especially at like high doses. And I think perhaps that's not well known as much. But yeah, the reason why anyone can purchase CBD oil on the market is because supplements aren't regulated like medicine. So it doesn't need to go under the same efficacy or safety checks. So it could be completely ineffective and it can still be sold, and it can be completely unsafe and it's still sold because it's not a medicine, it's considered a food. So it's interesting. I'm not completely against it. I just think we need more research, and people who are consuming it should be aware that it may not be effective. It may be effective, could cause these side effects.
Yeah. I'm surprised that I've seen it so much in the fitness world. So, recovery from fitness and, sleep, being able to sleep. And it's surprising to hear that it's not.
Well, that's it. And I have my own podcast. And so I've spoken to experts who produce research in CBD. And they're like, I'm sorry, but there's not that much tangible evidence here.
Yeah.
But then I speak to people who are high performing athletes and they swear by it, and because it's technically safe for them to use it from a testing point of view, they find it effective. But whether that's placebo or not, whether it's because it's also in a balm that has magnesium in it, there's a lot of other things in there, and those people are probably getting 8 hours of sleep, having a perfect diet, exercising every day. So it's hard to know whether it's going to help a person who's really struggling to sleep, who isn't having a good diet, who's undergoing loads of stress at work. Mm-hmm. I think we need to think about the low-hanging fruit, like I said, get the basics right, and then add on the icing on the cake if you've got time and money to do so.
Definitely. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
Where do you think the world of nutrition will be in, say, 10 or 20 years? Where the people like, for example, Bill Gates, who find up a lot of land, who think about artificial foods. There's a lot of genetic people to find things out there. How do you stay safe while trying to still eat healthy?
The nutrition space will kind of evolve a lot more so with those kind of lab-grown meats and lab-grown foods and things like that. I think the most interesting and evolving area of research from a nutrition point of view is personalized nutrition. And, you see projects like the Zoe Nutrition, who are now using CGM monitors and doing microbiome testing. And so they're checking your blood glucose levels to certain foods. They're checking what your microbiome's saying. They're doing other blood tests and biomarkers and telling you what you should eat. I think it's very early for that. And obviously it's, not accessible to the masses, only to select few. And it requires a bit of testing and error. But I imagine that will be the future of nutrition within the next 5 to 10 years, where we're giving people personalized diets based on their biological makeup, I think.
Definitely.
How much, and you touched on this several times, how strong a relationship is there between diet and your mental health? Is it a lifestyle thing that helps out with mental health? Or is it what you're eating? Or is it a mix of those?
A mix of those, but there's a really interesting connection between the gut and the brain, and also diet and the brain. And I think one of my favorite studies which really illustrates this is called the SMILES trial, and it's the only trial name I ever remember because it's got a great name. And it was based in Australia, and they basically took a group of people with severe depression. They stayed on their medication, but they split them into two groups, and one group was put on a modified Mediterranean style diet. So it was like very plant-based, low fiber, very healthy. They had like dietitians involved for 12 weeks. The other the other group went on a befriending support group. So they just kind of had support systems in place. They found that the dietary group after 12 weeks 33% of them went into remission versus 7% in the befriending group. And that was just 12-week dietary protocol. That was the only thing that changed. That particular group, research group, have expanded the work that they do. They now have a food and mood centre in Australia. And the head professor, Professor Felice Jacka, now works at Zoe London as well. And they're producing incredible work in terms of the roles of how diet can act as an adjunct in those mental health disorders. But I think it really does make sense when you think about it. Like, a lot of people will refer to the gut as the second brain, because when you're feeling anxious or you're excited for something, you'll feel it in your gut, and it goes both ways. And that's a connection between your brain and your gut and the vagus nerve, but also your gut microbiome. They produce chemicals that have far-reaching effects that influence our mood and also other aspects of health. But I think it's probably not something that works in isolation. I think, it also is, when you're eating well, you tend to be looking after your health, and then, you're probably taking time to cook food. It's probably like a lot more relaxing than, just choosing something on an iPhone screen. So there's a lot of other things to consider, but it's definitely a powerful effect.
How long before vegan profiles are on the...
I'm not sure. They are used in certain conditions like IBS, but I don't know whether they'll be used for other health conditions. Also, interestingly, a lot of patients are quite adverse to it because they find it's not something that they're interested in doing. But whether we are going to start integrating that into the system, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
If you step into the medical world,
Are there any conflicts or Caesar plant beef with...
say, because on one side you have, say, GPs or doctors.
So you sit patient down and say, why you've got this going on, this habit may help you. On the other side, you got nutritionists a little bit deeper into nourishing your body. Do you find there's any conflicts in that way?
Largely already sick, especially in my work, it was in secondary care in a hospital, and a lot of it would be emergency care, and so you don't have time to talk about nutrition and diet and exercise. You're just jumping on their chest and trying to save their life, and so you have that side of it. But then how do they get there in the first place? And that will be because of lifestyle, yes, genetics as well, and other factors, but it's hugely preventative. And I think that starts in primary care at the GP practice when they first arrive with their first sign, and that's high blood pressure, or it's high cholesterol, or it's twinges in their chest. And that's where I see it going wrong for when my father had his stroke, because he was just diagnosed at high blood pressure. He was told he's on track for having type 2 diabetes. And yet he was still sent away with pills, but no dietitian support, no go to the gym and do all of, get active, manage your stress, get more sleep. Had that happened, how might things have changed? And that's kind of my question and thing. And I think a lot of doctors are interested in that, but they're so fatigued, they're so overworked, they just don't have time. And I think about this a lot, and I think it's not about retraining doctors to be nutritionists and personal trainers, because they're very good at what they do. It's about integrating that into the system, getting nutrition coaches at that door, whether we could integrate that into a general practice or access to training like personal training, community training, so that people learn from the beginning and it prevents devastating effects down the line. I think that's the only solution forward.
Great.
Short one from me, firstly, thanks, Hazel. It's very insightful stuff. Something that's piqued my interest quite recently, and apologies, you may well have covered it extensively in the past, is prolonged fasting. Now, what are your thoughts on it, and also some of the benefits that lots of health experts claim that come part and parcel when someone indulges in prolonged fasting?
By prolonged fasting, how long do you mean? I don't think the research in humans is there to say that it's hugely beneficial. And because there's a lot of risk for an individual, especially when it comes to people who are at risk of nutrition or women in particular, which is a lot of the clients that I would particularly work with, I think the risks outweigh the benefits, and there's a lot more evidence-based ways to improve your health. I think one way of integrating it without huge risks would be more like intermittent fasting, where you're fasting for 12 to 16 hours of the day versus fasting for 48 hours. I know that there's huge proponents out there for longer fasting protocols, but I don't think you'll find a lot of the more evidence-based researchers backing it yet. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Is that cause for concern in your opinion?
I think it's just something that's, when something extreme and sexy comes into the wellness space, people jump on it. And the more extreme it is, the more interesting it is for people, be that like hot or cold therapy, fasting, different supplements. And I guess what I've learned to do over the last 10 years of working in the space is stepping back and thinking what helps the majority of people. And I don't think it's 48 hours of fasting.
Great. I think we'll wrap it up there. Where can people follow you?
Very easy to find. The Food Medic on all platforms, social media, website, and my books are on Amazon, and The Food Medic for Life, and The Female Factor.
The website is?
thefoodmedic.co.uk.
Okay, great. Please join me in thanking Dr. Hazel Wallace.